This week on Pop Culture Graveyard, one of my all-time favorite bands, the MC5. So the MC5 was formed in Lincoln Park, Michigan in 1964. And like a lot of bands who were influenced by the British invasion, they mostly played updated R&B songs, some British invasion covers. The band was born out of a brotherhood of two guitarists, Fred Sonic Smith and Wayne Kramer. Fred was a master of rhythm guitar, and Wayne's leads were scorching. So the twin guitar interplay really set them apart from a lot of other bands on the Detroit scene. Their lead singer was Rob Tyner, the bass player is Michael Davis, and the drummer was Dennis Thompson. Dennis Machine Gun Thompson, because that's how he sounded when he played the drums. One of my all-time favorite drummers. I don't want to get too much into the history of the band because there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on politically. Dope, rock and roll, and fucking in the streets. We don't need to talk about that. Anyway, I want to concentrate on the music. So the band is known for their live show. They're playing everywhere. They're building up quite a following in Detroit. And they become sort of the house band for the Grandy Ballroom. The Grandy Ballroom had a storied history, and there's a great documentary on it that I think you should check out. But anyway, the MC5 were the house band, and they would open for all the other bands that would come in, like Cream, or The Who, or any of the bigger bands of the day. And the MC5 would try to blow them off the stage. And they usually did, because it was their home crowd. The headlining band didn't really know what they were getting into. So before long, the record industry starts sniffing around. A lot of the major labels were scared away by the band's counterculture politics. Elektra was not. Elektra was known for folk artists. They had just gotten into psychedelic rock with Love and The Doors. And so they were looking to expand their roster of rock artists. Danny Fields, who was the resident freak for the label, he was assigned to go and see the MC5 live. And the band he saw was the band of the first album. You know, oftentimes it's said that a band is so great live and there's just no way to capture that in the studio. Well, you know how you capture that? You go to their home club, you set up recording devices, and you just capture what happens. This was recorded over 2 nights, October 30th and 31st of 1968. It was not released until February of 69. And when it was released, it made quite an impression on people. This was the most raucous, raw, rocking sound you could find in the record stores back then. It was high energy. It had a little bit of church in it, too. There's a lot of call and response. Supposedly, the band would drive around in the van going from gig to gig, and they only had a few tapes. And one of the tapes they would listen to all the time was James Brown live at the Apollo. And on that recording, James is constantly, right now, and his bandmates are shouting back to him. And so there's a lot of right now on this album. It's fun, it's exciting. This sounds like a band that's about to take over the world. They truly believed they would. Their audience believed they would. Their following believed they would. The record label thought they might. And what's on here is exciting stuff. Kick Out the Jams, of course, is well known. The opening track, Ramblin' Rose, sung by Wayne Kramer, is another exciting track. Come Together is a really strong workup. Rocket Reducer number 62, Ramalama, Fa Fa Fa, is as fun as it sounds. It's the sound of a band of brothers. You would really believe that these guys spent the last 4 years living together and playing together. They're so tight. They recorded quite a lot of songs, but there's only 8 songs on here. And that's because some of them are rather long. Starship is on here, which is one of my favorite songs by them. Borderline is a fantastic song. It combines everything they do well. There's a lot of energy. It blows up at one point. It simmers. It just does everything you want it to do. I Want You Right Now is actually a song by the Trogs that was mangled by the MC5 into their own style, and it's exciting and fun and frighteningly good. The only thing missing from here is Black to Calm, which was sort of their high energy freak out at the end of their sets. And it was the only way that their sets could end. It's a powerful track, and I wish it had been included, but there's been plenty of live stuff since then where they do include Black to Calm. On the lead track, Kick Out the Jams, Rob Tyner says, "Kick out the jams, motherfuckers." And one chain of stores, Hudson's, which was sort of Michigan's Kmart at that time, said that they would not stock the album. So the MC5 took out a full-page ad in one of the music papers that said, "Fuck Hudson's." And unfortunately for them, they put the Elektra logo on it. So Hudson's quickly contacted Elektra and said, "We're no longer going to carry any of your artists." It's one thing to have Elektra miss out on all that MC5 money, but if a major chain store is telling them that we're not going to carry the Doors, we're not going to carry anybody with your label, that's a lot of money that they're missing out on. So Elektra dropped the MC5 unceremoniously, and they wind up on Atlantic for their next album. This was recorded from March to October of '69, but it was not released until January of 1970, and that's par for the course for the MC5. Their albums came out the year after they were recorded, and so their music might have been a little bit behind the times. Fortunately, they were so ahead of the times that it sort of made sense. Unlike Kick Out the Jams, which was 40 minutes, this only gives you about 28 minutes of music. It was produced by John Landau, who later managed Bruce Springsteen, and these days heads up the nomination committee for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But back then, John Landau was just a music critic who wanted to get into music production. And he became friendly with the head of Atlantic Records, who allowed him to produce this album. And John Landau was not a fan of psychedelic music, but he was a big fan of 50s music. And so there are two covers on here, which bookend the album. Tutti Frutti by Little Richard, and Back in the USA, the title track by Chuck Berry. This is seen as the MC5's best statement. This is seen as their best album, their masterpiece, whatever you want to call it. It's a slight album, and it has a bit of a skinny sound, but the power of the band can't be contained. It's got Looking at You on it, which is one of the most powerful tracks ever recorded, in Detroit or otherwise. It's got Teenage Lust, which is a fun, youthful song. It's got Call Me Animal, which is a raucous number that shows off the drumming of Dennis Thompson. Human Being Lawnmower is my favorite track on the album, and it really shows off the drummer well. High School is a great track, and you can tell there's a little bit of a 50s production on it, per John Landau. Tonight is a great song that aged well, and I used to love Let Me Try, the ballad on the album. It's a sweet song. It may be Rob Tyner's best statement with the MC5. It's one of my favorite MC5 moments because it shows another tender side to them. So this is a great album, and usually the one that musicians like best. That brings us to High Time. This album was recorded between September and October of 1970, but it wasn't released until July of '71. There's a lot more music on this. It's about 42 minutes. In my opinion, this is the MC5 album that's aged the best. This is one that I would play when I DJ, and people are just like, who is this? This really showcases Fred Sonic Smith and how far he had come as a composer. Sister Ann is a great song. It's very Springsteen-esque. Future Now may be my favorite track on the album. Go up in the search, go to Future Now, MC5, watch that, you come back, you tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not wrong. Poison is a great track. Gotta Keep Moving by the drummer, Dennis Thompson, is a great track. There's no fat on the bone, and it's 40 minutes of raucousness. This is a killer, killer album. The MC5 broke up after High Time, but the band was far from forgotten. Reach Out International Records, or ROAR, which was a cassette-only company in the 70s and 80s, put out Babes in Arms. I tore this apartment apart, I couldn't find it. But I have the vinyl equivalent, Babes in Arms. This one was on white vinyl. Everything you need is here. If you're like, you know what, I want some MC5, I'm not sure what to get Babes in Arms. It's got everything. It's got a good cross-section. It has the first single they ever did, which is a cover of Them, Van Morrison's first band. It's got the Looking at You single. It's got the uncensored Kick Out the Jams from their first album. There are remixes and alternate takes of tracks from both Back in the USA and High Time. And it also features a song called Gold, which was written by Wayne Kramer and recorded by the band for a soundtrack of a film of the same name that ended up never being used. So it's got essentials and it's got odds and ends. It's a really good starting point or finishing point if you're collecting the MC5. If you love the MC5, you're going to want more live stuff because that's when they truly shined. And with a resurgence in popularity thanks to punk bands and grunge bands name-checking them, there was a lot of live stuff suddenly flooding the market. There's Power Trip and Greatest Hits Live. And both of these feature really great versions of Black to Calm, their high-energy, freak-out explosion. If these comps, and many others like them, if they all have one failing, it's that they're kind of snipped together from different performances, different times, different eras, different sound quality. I'm a sucker for actually being at the concert, and that's why I like Live at Sturgis Armory. This was recorded in June of '68, a good 4 months before the MC5 recorded their debut album. And so it's a much more sloppy affair. At the same time, it's a lot more energetic and exciting and edgy. They're not as polished as you would hear them on the debut album. Side 1 has the usual rockers, Kick Out the Jams, Come Together, Borderline. But it also has a James Brown medley. Cold Sweat, I Can't Stand Myself, and There Was a Time. They loved James Brown, as we all do. And they were maybe the only white band at the time that could pull off that kind of medley. And they do. Side 2 is way more experimental, and this is the reason I truly love this album. Side 2 opens with Upper Egypt, which is a Pharoah Sanders song, which was a big influence on them. And they do a really cool tribute to it. Somehow it works. They follow that up with Starship, which is their Sun Ra tribute, and then they close with Black to Calm. So you're pretty much getting the set you would get if you went to Sturgis Armory and sat down in 1968 and the MC5 came on. Check it out. So into the MC5 was I that I tracked down their only appearance on British soil, Fun City. Here we go. Fun City, UK. This concert took place in July of 1970 in Worthing. It was supposed to be a regular concert with a whole bunch of cool bands, and it got way too big for the promoters, so it ended up being turned into a free festival. That never ends well. And so a bunch of bands, upon hearing it was going to be a free festival and that they wouldn't be paid, got back in their limo and headed out of there. Ironically, one of the bands that wouldn't play for free was free. They didn't even get out of their limo. They just turned around and went. The MC5 were one of the bands that stayed and played, and they played great. Another band that played was the Pretty Things, and the Pink Fairies played. But the MC5 totally blew away the audience. Wayne Kramer has gone on record as saying it was one of their best performances, and they really wanted to show the British how it was done. Two people were in the audience that day. Billy Idol, who would form Generation X 6 years later, and Mick Jones, who would form The Clash about 6 years later. They were both blown away, and Billy Idol said he saw the future of music. In any case, the set list is a monster, and it's worth hearing. It's got stuff from every era. Ramblin' Rose, Tonight, Ramalama Fa Fa Fa, Miss X, Looking at You, I Want You, Sister Ann, Kick Out the Jams, / Black to Calm. Now the sound on this is horrible. If you're curious though about this era of the band that played at Fun City, check out the MC Live at Wayne State University. They played there the day before they left for England. And the Wayne State University performances where they do Looking at You, Kick Out the Jams, Ramblin' Rose, it's the best they ever were. So I really wish that this had better quality. But I'm thrilled that we have this era of the band represented on YouTube. So check out, if you see nothing else after this, watch Wayne State University. Tarter Field they play. They play that college, burn that college down to the ground. It is one of the great live performances. And Wayne's dancing, mwah. All sorts of curios began emerging. Icepick Slim. This is the MC5 really jamming. There's 3 tracks on this, and it's almost 50 minutes of music. Motor City is Burnin', Icepick Slim, and I'm Mad Like Eldridge Cleaver. If that doesn't bring you back to 1968, I don't know what will. When the band broke up and they went their different ways, the 2 guitarists made some interesting music. Fred Sonic Smith released what I think is the last great Detroit rock song, City Slang. Fred formed the Sonic Rendezvous Band with rock action. Scott Ashton, the drummer of the Stooges, is on board. It's one of those songs that you wish were longer, and it is. It goes on forever. In fact, this has 2 tracks on it, A and B. The B-side is at 45 RPM, and the A-side with City Slang is at 33 RPM, just to fit it all in. This is a UK release on Devil's Jukebox Records, and this is pretty cool. An edition of 666 copies. Only 666 copies were made. This is 661. But this is a fantastic song. If you like Detroit rock at all and you've never heard City Slang, put it on. In 1998, everything that Sonic Smith was up to with that band was released. Sweet Nothing. This has got everything they did. There's 10 songs on this. An 8-minute and 27-second version of City Slang ends this. So I highly recommend you look up Sonic's Rendezvous Band. Wayne Kramer had become a heroin junkie towards the end of the MC5. Jail. He went to jail. Kicked heroin in jail. He got out, and he wanted to stay nice and straight and sober. And so what did he do? He teamed up with Johnny Thunders. That's how you kick heroin. And they put out a band called Gang War. They never released an official album, so this album is named Gang War. They had many different drummers over the years. They're here with Martin Chambers on this recording. There were Johnny songs you know on here, like London Boys. They do MIA, but there's a bunch of untitled songs on this. And the band sounds great. This band, you wonder what might have happened, but they weren't long for the world. I mean, just look at the state Johnny's in here. Because heroin. Yeah, that kind of tells the tale. If you just want to hear a little bit more about the story of the MC5 from an insider, the best word on that is from Wayne himself, The Hard Stuff, Dope Crime, the MC5, and My Life of Impossibilities. This is a really fascinating tale. It's all in here. You want the Black Panthers? They're in here. You want the FBI and CIA and the COINTELPRO? It's in here. You want heroin? You want mandrax? You want cocaine? It's all in here. You want jail? You want redemption? It's all in here. If there's one feeling that this book left me with, it was sadness. And I really feel for the MC5. I think that a couple of right turns instead of left turns, a couple of better breaks, and they might have been happier with themselves and each other. They might not have made the impact they did if they had made those turns or gotten those breaks. I think about that all the time with the MC5. But the MC5 are a great band, and I really hope you check them out. Thanks for joining me on Pop Culture Graveyard. I will see you next week with more cool stuff. In the meantime, please hit the subscribe button.